Hold on.
Which I love. Norma?
You're managing the video, right?
Not a lot of experience. I mean,
Good morning, everyone. Did I say morning? Just checking to see if you're all paying attention. All right, thank you for taking the time to attend tonight's City Council meeting. For the record, it's March 20th, and the time is 6:30 p.m. I'll begin with the roll call. So, Council, when I call your name, please say here or present. Mayor Maxton.
Here.
Councilmember Stroop.
here.
Councilmember Roden.
Here.
Councilmember Olvera.
Here.
Councilmember Kerner.
Here.
Councilmember Parker.
Here.
And Councilmember Swarig.
Here.
With 7 members of council present, a quorum is declared.
Thank you, Christina. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, that sounded awesome. I would like to welcome everybody that's here attending the meeting tonight. As a reminder, we do live broadcast our meetings, and would like to welcome all those that are joining us by live broadcast. If you do get an opportunity to speak as part of the meeting tonight, I ask those that are here with us that you speak from the podium that's up here and use the microphone that's there. And the reason for that is because the people that are watching the live broadcast won't be able to hear the comments if you present them from the seats where you're sitting right now. And when you do get an opportunity to speak, I'd ask that you introduce yourself and state whether or not you're a Fair Oaks Ranch resident, or if you're with an organization that's speaking here tonight, let us know what organization that you are here from. And with that, we'll move on to our citizens and guest forum. And as a reminder, council may not discuss or take action on any item which has not been posted on the agenda. And I also ask that all speakers please limit your comments to 5 minutes. And we did have several people that signed up to speak tonight. And the first individual that I have is Nick DeCiani. And I didn't see Nick. He left. Okay. Gary Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Gary Miller. My wife Georgia and I live on Fair Oaks Parkway right at High Echelon. And we're here, I'm here this evening to represent a number of individuals living in that area around your item number 10, which is included in the recommendations of the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee to put a stop sign at the bottom at an intersection which we think is fairly dangerous in that area, at the bottom of Battle Intense, right there where High Echelon and Hansel come together. If you've been in that area before, you realize that's a 3-way stop right now. People coming on High Echelon out of that area or down Hansel or down High Echelon stop there. But folks coming down the hill in Battle Intense after, and I'm saying this advisedly because I've seen it many times, whipping off of Fair Oaks Parkway and making the turn down to there, do not have to stop. And it causes quite a bit of confusion there. Several of us in the community have discussed this with the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee twice. And I just want to come and represent those again. We have grandchildren living on High Echelon. There's a bus stop right down there at that intersection. It's an offset intersection, which makes it even more confusing for folks. And many of us who've lived there have witnessed close calls with bicycles, cars going too fast down that hill, skateboards, golf carts. And it is an intersection, I think, that would be prudent to just put a stop sign there. This has actually been before the board before, and it was approved once and not the second time, wishing to have comments from the community. So we've now brought those comments to the committee twice, and I'm here representing that group again. And so we appreciate your consideration of what we think is a very simple solution to a intersection that could be very dangerous. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here tonight and providing your comments.
Thank you all for your work. We appreciate it.
Next is Doug Miller. Mr. Miller.
I'm Doug Miller, no relation to Gary Miller, who just spoke. Plenty of Millers in town, I guess. My wife and I, Ramey, live on Rolling Acres Trail. We've been residents of Fair Oaks for the past 20 years. And after listening to Gary's comments, I realized some of these should be directed towards the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee, but my wife and I are very concerned about just the overall growth and speed limits and traffic and congestion that's developed over the past 20 years, obviously. We see it especially on FM 3351. Trying to enter and exit that street can be rather hazardous, especially at the current posted speed of 55, except during the construction zone of 45. But we've noticed that even just that small section of road that has been reduced to 45 has helped tremendously, actually, to slow down cars and allow entrance and egress from 3351 from the feeder streets, whether it be at Meadow Creek where it just starts, Silver Spur just after the posted speed limit, and Keeneland and so forth, all the way through until the speed limit comes back up towards Dietz Elkhorn. We would like to understand what the process would be to seek reducing the speed limit just through the city limits of Fair Oaks from city limit sign to city limit sign down to 45 permanently after the construction, to allow that additional traffic speeds to allow the safety of entry and egress through our city. Obviously, there's homes that are directly living, enter and egress from there, as well as the feeder streets that come through. And when you do the math, it really only adds 61 seconds to somebody's trip if they happen to be lucky enough to hit both the lights at Fair Oaks Parkway and at Dietz Elkhorn Green. If you're slowing down to either one of those lights, it actually has less of an impact by lowering the speed limit more than that. So it's really not an inconvenience where it would be a significant improvement and increase to public safety. On a similar note, we live on Rolling Acres Trail, and it seems to be one of the main feeder roads, in town that does not have a speed limit of 30 miles an hour. So if you look at the condition of Keeneland, for example, with a posted speed limit of 30 with nice wide shoulders and lots of room for egress and a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, Rolling Acres at 35 can be quite hazardous with people who typically don't go 35, whether you're walking your dog or just out, working in the yard in front of your property, picking up your mail, for example. People whiz by there pretty quick. And while we appreciate the enforcement that the police have been doing, especially recently, of trying to monitor there, there seems to be plenty of light flashing towards cars and warning people when the police are actually, trying to monitor speed and get people to slow down. And we feel that, reducing the speed on Rolling Acres from 35 to 30, consistent with the other feeder roads, whether it be Meadow Creek, Keeneland, obviously portions of Dietz Elkhorn and Fair Oaks Parkway, all are in that same zone, would also greatly improve the safety in those areas. Coming out of our house, it's not uncommon to see people really whizzing by when you pull out at a reasonable distance and speed. You realize the car coming around the corner from Almond Road is really heading at you closer to 50 miles an hour than 35. It really closes that distance very quickly and makes it a big concern. So beyond those comments and being concerned about the public safety, I really like to seek the question of what really is the best process to formally move forward to try to have those changes made within our city. Is that something you can comment on, or is that a non-comment there?
I mean, we have your comment, but yes, the proper way to address this would be through the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee. And there is a form, is it online, to fill out that can be submitted to the committee. But we also have the information, and we can, in fact, you have the president of the committee here tonight also, so.
We'd love to get involved any way we can to try to help facilitate that if that's possible. We have to slow down going through every other small town in Texas if you're on a state highway or a farm to market road, but whizzing through Fair Oaks Parkway, you can zip through at 55 miles an hour. Just seems to be a little bit of an exception to the public safety and moving through where we have a lot of homes and businesses and churches, obviously, along that thoroughfare.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, sir, and I thank you for being here tonight and coming up, meeting the council and providing your comments
I
tonight. So
appreciate
thank
all you do. Thank you.
And next I have David Fairhurst. Is David still here? He left also. And Gary Menezes, a former mayor of the city.
I'm Gary Menezes. My wife and I reside in Deer Meadow Estates. I had not planned to speak tonight, but I was asked to basically to help resolve a quorum issue we had with too many MDD folks here for a couple of other people that were signed up to speak. The issue I was asked to address basically is that in looking at the council packet, the information here makes it appear that the MDD board had taken a formal action to approve the composition of the membership on there. What I was told by the two folks who left because they couldn't mess up the quorum was this: essentially MDD took no formal action and no vote on this. That being said, I think it might be in your interest to defer final decision-making on this until after the MDD board has taken some formal action on it. That was their desire. They asked me to make that comment for them tonight. That's all I had. Thank you all very much for your service.
Okay.
I guess I could make one matter-of-fact response. Can I? Gary? I was just going to respond. So we did recognize that error after it was submitted. The packet has been updated. The version that City Council does not have that in there. Yeah.
And that completes the list of all the individuals that signed up to speak as part of Citizens to be Heard. Is there anybody here tonight that did not get an opportunity to sign up that would like to speak? Okay, and then we'll move on with our agenda tonight. And next we have a presentation, and one presentation from ACOG.
Good evening, Mayor and councilmen and women. My name is Crystal Campos Rosales. I'm the External Affairs Coordinator with the Public Affairs Department at Alamo Area Council of Governments, short for, ACOG for short. Thank you again to the city manager for the invitation. Y'all are one of our member governments, so we want to be attuned to your needs, and so it's an honor to come out. So thanks again for having me. This evening, let me double check. Are we in business? I will try to keep it as concise as possible. I know it's going to be a lot of information. I definitely will address any questions anyone has at the end. The city secretary does, though, have my contact information. So if anyone's interested in contacting me after the meeting, tomorrow, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. For our agenda this evening, I'm going to review some ACOG facts and functions of the agency, as well as cover both of our arms of the agency, both resident serving services and government services, and do a little plug for grant services. My colleague, Claudia Mora, who is our regional services administrator, was unable to join me this evening, but still want to do a quick plug for grant services, which she's able to assist with. So some quick history about the agency. We have been in existence for over 50 years. We were organized back in 1968 as a regional planning commission or council of governments. An interesting fact is that you will find a regional planning commission, if not several, or a COG in any state across the United States. So challenge you the next time you're traveling, keep an eye out for those regional planning commissions or COGs in the area that you're at. We are a political subdivision of the state, which allows us to plan and assist local governments. We also are able to deliver public services, some of which I'll highlight here shortly, but we do not possess the authority to tax or regulate, and we are also not a nonprofit organization. Our state law requires our governing body to be comprised primarily of local government officials. We have a 35-member board. We have 13 counties that we cover, and so we have a county judge from each of those 13 counties, along with representation from cities such as yours, across the region. We also have representation from some school districts, utilities, as well as special districts. Our 13-county region spans, as of the last census, a little over 12,500 square miles, equating to about 2.8 million residents. We were designated as one of the first 4 economic development districts in the United States. This is just a good physical, visual blueprint of our region. We like to say we service as far north as Gillespie to as down south as Frio and McMullen. And there's a listing of all of those 13 counties. So going into our resident serving side or arm of the agency, we have quite a few programs that deliver public services. Our area agencies on aging consist of both Alamo and Bexar. Alamo covers all of the rural communities outside of Bexar County, and Bexar obviously covers Bexar County. This program is designed to really just improve the quality of life for adults 60 years and older. We very much want adults to feel like they can age in place and, if possible, at their homes. This program is so large that we have sub-areas, subspecialties within it. Some of those include care coordination. Our care coordinators are able to help with essential needs such as diapering, also just helping to maintain hygiene. If older adults are in need of those hygienic supplies, we're able to connect them with that resource. Also, we understand that the caregiver role, which unfortunately often falls on a family member, is just so important, but can also be very exhausting. So we are able to offer resources for education on how to properly bathe, an older adult, how to properly make sure that you're positioning them to get up, and not so quickly. So we're able to provide those training workshops and services just so they can feel more confident in delivering that very important service. We're also able to provide respite for those individuals. They need a break here, and so that's definitely something that we pride ourselves on. We also, as open enrollment rolls around for Medicare and benefits, we have state licensed benefits counselors who are able to meet one-on-one with residents and thoroughly review the new Medicare plans that came out that an individual may not be so familiar with, just being better able to help them navigate through that open enrollment process and not feel so overwhelmed. Our Intellectual and Developmental Disability Services, or IDD services for short, helps plan and administer programs designed specifically to improve the quality of life of those individuals. Although our main blueprint is here in Bexar County for that service, we have since expanded to some of the other counties. That is another one of our larger programs, and we do have sub-areas within, some of which consist of intake and eligibility. Helping a family navigate through the intake process can be just, grueling if you try to do it on your own. So we're able to meet with them, sit down with them, go through all of the paperwork so that they can receive the eligibility that they need. We have psychological examiners on staff who are also able to administer the evaluations in order for an official diagnosis to be established. We also have very close connections with dehabilitation, services for those who are in need of that. And as individuals with IDD who may have been in a group home or at a facility, as they try to transition from that environment and return back to home, we have a transitional services team who's able to provide that support as well. Another resident serving program is we're very proud of our military and veteran affairs side of the house. We have what is known as our Alamo Veterans Network, or AVN for short. That is a huge referral resource hub. We have relationships, close partnerships with over 230 organizations throughout the region. So we are able to assist not only veterans, but also active duty members and their families, recent retirees. We've had a lot of calls actually as of late from spouses of, active duty members who are saying, my husband was we were just deployed over here to San Antonio, and I'm really looking for employment. We could definitely connect them with Workforce Solutions Alamo, who's a strong partner of ours, to help with resume building, going through the interview process, as well as helping them to find some just resources for what jobs are currently available. We would love to give back to those who just gave their time and their service to our nation. Our weatherization assistance program assists low-income residents throughout our region just really overcome that high cost of energy. Unfortunately, these homes are just in bad condition because of the lack of income, and so this program is income based. That's how you qualify, and there are certain thresholds. I encourage anyone interested to contact that director directly, or of course visit our website to gain more information. But should even a renter is able to apply, of course, with the permission of your landlord. The program is able to install just weatherization measures to help just reduce that high cost of energy. So if a home is not properly insulated, as we know, the air conditioner is just going to work overtime in our Texas hot summer months, and then the heater is going to do double duty as well during the winter. And so they are able to do insulation as well as caulking of the window seals, and also replace HVAC system to make sure that it's up to par and energy efficient, as well as install energy efficient bulbs as well. Our Alamo Regional Transit, although they operate mostly in our rural counties because Bexar County does have VIA as our main provider, I did want to include them in the presentation in that we have a lot of veterans and military families who are in need of transportation in Bexar County for appointments. Through our Rides for Texas Heroes program, they're able to secure transportation to those appointments to the VA and other things. On the government serving side of the house, we have our regional services. This program administrator works very closely, especially with our member governments. She can provide technical assistance and advocacy for economic and community development. She is our ED expert on the team, as well as our grant expert. Very well versed in urban and rural planning. That's what her education was in. She likes to describe herself as she writes term papers for a living, but she's just phenomenal at what she does. So she is accessible to you all as a member government. We realize that the smaller entities are limited on staff and bandwidth. So city secretary may be doing, multiple roles. And so please, we're able to assist with searching for grants if you're in need of road repair or, trying to revitalize downtown. Claudia Mora could definitely assist, as she has a good database to search for those grants. Natural resources, our natural resources department works very hard to monitor local air quality. So if you'll note on the news, or even if you follow social media very closely, if you see those high ozone action days, those come from us, which we receive from the Texas Commission on environmental quality. So we have different monitors throughout the region that give us those ozone levels. For environmental conservation, she really, as the program specialist, provides meaningful solutions to help just reduce solid waste disposal. If you have tuned into KSAT recently or News 4, we're very proud. We just completed an educational awareness campaign on illegal dumping and the harmful effects that can have on people's health. And so she works very closely with entities to help educate them on, proper protocols, and also inform them of the different hubs and businesses that are available in the region to where waste can be properly disposed of. We've seen so many cases come through, or we've been made aware of them, of all these tires just being illegally dumped, or mattresses and couches. So just we strongly felt that educating our people is definitely important. Last but certainly not least, public safety is our last government serving program. We're very proud of our Alamo Area Regional Law Enforcement Academy, very well known throughout not just the region but the state. We train those newly, graduated cadets. We call them. They, go through this grueling process, but have amazing instructors. And so that academy houses three different cohorts of cadets throughout the course of every year. But we also are able to offer continuing education for our seasoned and advanced law enforcement individuals. On the criminal justice side, we have an interlocal agreement with the Office of the Governor, Public Safety Division, to help administer grants, to help with different issues that entities are experiencing, just to make sure that everyone is protected. For Homeland Security, unfortunately, so many of us learned so much from the recent event of what happened in Uvalde. And so prior to that, our Homeland Security Division was already hosting a lot of trainings for active shooters and other things along those lines. But since then, they've really increased the amount of workshops that they've been having. We've had a lot of school districts reach out for these sort of trainings, and we have been able to readily assist them. So we're very proud of that. For Regional 911, that applies to only 7 of our counties. We work very closely with telephone providers as well as telecommunicators, just to ensure that all of those 911 calls that are received in those counties are properly directed to the public safety answering point, to the correct answering point. Oh, goodness. And just real quick to close us out, I wanted to do a little plug for Claudia. So as a member of government, she can, of course, look up any grants if you're interested in specific, programs, initiatives. But beyond that, per our fairly new executive director, it's been a little over a year now, we are providing grant writing and administration services. So she's now able, for a fee, to go beyond just searching for those grants. She's able to help with grant reporting and also compliance, and help with management, with fiscal management of those grants. I am going to leave the presentation, or actually Ms. Christina has a copy of it, but that has more information specifically on the grant services. But Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure. I'm going to stay and listen to the rest of the business. I know y'all have a full agenda, so thank you for your time. I'm happy really quickly to answer any pressing questions if you have any.
Any questions from council? No?
All right.
Any questions from anyone here tonight? Well, Crystal, thank you very much for being here tonight, and appreciate you taking the
welcome.
time to, I know you have a busy day, and come spend the evening with us as part of our council meetings. So
Of
thank you.
course. Thank you again for the invitation and for having me.
With that, we'll move on to our consent agenda tonight. We only have one item on the consent agenda, which is the approval of the March 6, 2025 regular city council meeting minutes. Is there any council member that would like to pull this from consent to consideration? Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? From Ruben in a second.
Second.
All in favor of approval of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved.
Excuse me,
Thank-
Mayor?
Yes,
Who seconded?
Scott Parker.
Scott, thank you.
And with that, we'll move on to our consideration items tonight. First consideration item is the consideration and possible action accepting the fiscal year 2023-24 audit report. Summer.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Summer Fleming, Director of Finance. And tonight, the fiscal year 2023-24 audit results will be presented by our audit partner, John Watson, with the firm Brooks, Watson and Company. Now, before this audit, the city had partnered with another firm for the last 7 fiscal years, which is quite common. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends entering into multi-year agreements of at least 5 years in duration. It allows for greater continuity and helps minimize the potential for disruption in connection with the annual audit. But the city issued an RFQ last June to solicit proposals for audit services to provide a fresh perspective on the financial statements, internal controls, and accounting practices, potentially leading to a more comprehensive and accurate audit. So based on the proposals received, the city retained the firm Brooks, Watson and Company to conduct the audit, and they also performed the annual audit for the MDD. Oftentimes, the first-year audit with a new firm can be a lengthier process because they are learning about our city operations for the first time, and staff has to learn and understand the auditor's processes. But overall, this audit went smoothly. I'd say due to open communication and pre-planning the expectations of both staff and the firm. So included in the agenda packet and bound copies provided to you tonight, you have the complete annual comprehensive financial report, the ACFR, and the popular annual financial report, the PAFR, which is a simplified document that summarizes the city's ACFR into a more accessible and understandable format. I am really proud of this document, and I'd like to thank Julie Lovelace, our accounting manager, for her hard work creating the PAFR and making it such a valuable resource for our residents. Both the reports can be found on the city's webpage under the Financial Transparency tab. So with that, I'll turn it over to John Watson to present the audit results and answer any questions you may have.
And since you mentioned Julie, we could just say happy birthday to her also.
It is her birthday today, too, yes.
Thank you, Summer. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you today. As Summer mentioned, we completed the audit over the year ended September 30, 24. So the information I go over today relates to that. I've got a PowerPoint. You all also have a handout of the same. So we'll get into it. So the audit was conducted consistently, was conducted consistently with U.S. Gas. That's generally accepted auditing standards. U.S. Gas audit is going to follow a 3-phased approach. The first phase is planning. That's where we assess the results for the current year. We compare it to prior year and to our expectations to try and focus on areas we find most susceptible to risk of error or fraud. And that's where we do the testing, the fieldwork stage. So we test those areas we've honed in on, and we vouch to underlying evidence to make sure things are recorded properly. We send confirmations to third parties to make sure they're showing the same results that the city shows. And where there are differences, we determine why and propose adjustments. So that's really a financial audit in a nutshell. The last phase is the conclusion and reporting phase. That's where we summarize those results. We help prepare that report that you all have in front of you and a couple letters. So that's quickly what a U.S. Gas audit is. The report itself There are six sections to it. The first section is the introductory section. That has information about the city, the organizational structure. It's got a letter of transmittal from management, describes where the city is and where they're headed to, so good place to look for that. Audit opinion follows that. That's a letter from us, your independent auditor, describes whether the financials are consistent with US GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, or if there are any modifications. We'll look at that in a slide to come. Management's discussion analysis is after that section. That shows the current year results compared to prior year, some explanation over changes year over year. Basic financials follow that. Those are presented on two different bases of accounting. The government-wide basis, which is full accrual, that shows all your long-term debt, your capital asset activity, and then a modified accrual, which is more near-term in nature. That's got your fund level similar to how you budget. Okay, toward the back of your report is the required supplementary information section. That's got your budget actual schedules. We'll take a look at that for your general fund. And that's got your pension schedules and your OPEB schedules. So you can see how well funded your pension is. We'll take a look at that as well. Very back of your report is the statistical section. It's got a lot of 10-year trend data, so you can see where the city was 10 years ago and where they've come from that period of time. So great place to look to see the trend lines on the city. Okay, so getting into it, I mentioned toward the beginning of your report is that letter from us, your independent auditor. There are 4 types of audit opinions you could receive, and those are listed here, kind of color-coded, green being the best and black being the worst, so unmodified down to adverse. The city is receiving an unmodified opinion, so that is the highest level of assurance a CPA can provide. That is a good thing. That basically means there are no material errors or inconsistencies in this report that we're aware of. In addition to that, the city also files for an award called the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is a national award from the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association. It's really going above and beyond just standard reporting. So you're required to get an audit and an audit opinion, but you are not required to file that. It's just another level of transparency and an extra set of review in addition to us, your auditor reviews this report. So they received that award. Not everybody that submits receives it, but the city checked those boxes and received that award last year. We fully expect them to receive it again this year. So that is a good thing. And thank you to the finance department. Summer and her team did a great job. First year she mentioned, and I know firsthand that those can be really difficult depending on makeup of the city. And they just did a wonderful job of getting us everything that we requested in a very timely manner, and we're appreciative of that. So some financial highlights. So again, this is September 30, 24, and the year ended the same. A few bullet points for you. Total assets exceeded total liabilities by about $40 million for the year. There was an increase in overall net position of about $3.1 million. This third bullet here, city's governmental funds reported a combined ending fund balance of about $14.9 million, which was an increase of about $3.8 million for the year. Your unassigned fund balance plus your 6-month operating reserve of fund balance in the general fund was about $7.2 million. That is 76% of your annual fund expenditures, general fund expenditures. So that is about 9 months worth of reserve. So very healthy reserve there. Last bullet, your net pension liability at year end was about $1.5 million. That was a decrease of about $600,000 for the year. We'll take a look at a slide that explains that difference there. This is a pie chart. I think the one you have printed has some of the descriptions here, but we'll go through the bullets here. Got a little funny on the printout here. Property taxes made up 62%. That's the green part of the chart here, $7.3 million. Prior year, it was also 62% at $7,062,000, so a small increase. Sales taxes make up 16%, $1,817,000. Prior year, that was 14%, $1,656,000. Charges for services in the current year make up 8% at $961,000. Prior year, it was 7% at about $830,000. That was the revenue side. So this is the expense side. Your governmental expenses in the current year were $9,925,000. Prior year, it was $11,129,734, so had a decrease year over year. Your largest components, public safety makes up 42% at $4,179,000. Prior year was 37%, close to $4.1 million. Public works makes up 14%, close to $1.4 million. Prior year it was 21%, $2,366,000. Engineering and planning make up 14%, $1,369,000. Prior year was also 14% at about $1.5 million. City administration make up 9%, close to $900,000. Prior year, it was closer to $1.2 million. So you can see the decrease year over year. So I mentioned the budget to actual schedules. This is your general fund where the majority of your taxes and expenditures are. So we'll take a look at that on a summarized level. There's also page references if you want to look at the details. They're in the blue bar at the top. So we have your final budget in the left column here, and then we have your actual results in the middle, and then the variance between budget and actual on the right, and some circled items that I'm going to talk about with your variance. So total revenues were over budget by $890,403. That was sales taxes, property tax, and investment income that were all over budget and contributed to that positive variance. Expenditures were under budget by $850,104. That was every department was under budget, so they all contributed to that positive change there. So these are feeding into that net overall positive change, bottom right, $1,910,120. Okay, so all the information up to this point has been about the governmental side, governmental activities. This is your business type activities, your proprietary fund, the water and sewer fund. So it's laid more like a business. We've got operating revenues at the top, operating expenses below that, and an operating margin there circled in red. And then some non-operating activity and a net change there also circled in red. So revenues over operating expenses generated positive operating income of $844,966. The investment income less bond issuance costs and interest expense coupled with the operating income led to an overall change of $1,119,189. So a surplus in the current year. Pension, so this is a 3-year look. If you look at this page, you'll have a 10-year look back, but these are the 3 most recent years. The most recent year is there on the far left column, and circled in red is your current net pension liability. I mentioned that number earlier. It's $1,527,916. So you can see the change if you look directly to the right from $2,123,927. So that was that decrease of about $600,000 year over year. The reason for the decrease is about, if I could point, which maybe I could with this, but it's about 6 rows up, $1,301,500, your net investment income. So if you think about the net investment income on your pension assets, the pension earned over 10% rate of return in the current year. So that's above the estimate that they provide, which is 6.75%. So when you exceed those estimates, that's what's helpful in boosting that asset relative to the pension liability, which is are the numbers above. So your net pension liability, the asset compared to that total pension liability, it comes down because the asset got larger than expected, okay? So that now you know, or if you didn't already, now you know the decrease in net pension liability. So a couple bullets at the bottom to kind of give you an idea of what does this mean. City's current funded ratio, which is a measure of that asset relative to that total pension liability, is 90%. So your asset is 90% of the pension liability. Prior year was 84%, so the position improved, we know that. Average funding levels in the same year, nationwide study of government pensions, is about 78%. So sitting at 90%, you're well above average. You're in a very well-funded position. The last item at the bottom here, contribution rates for the last 3 years, 12.47% in close to 12%. So that's how TMRS, each year they're adjusting your contribution rates as theoretically, as you get more well-funded, they're increasing them, but they can bring them down as well, and I have observed that. So hopefully that's the case as it gets to be more well-funded. That's everything I want to mention on the pension. So quite a bit of information, short amount of time. The other information we have, in addition to the report, are the 2 audit letters. Those are within the cover of your report if you open it up. The first letter, a lot of standard information, discusses we are independent. We don't have any relationships with the city outside of this audit contract. We conducted our audit consistently with U.S. Gas, discusses estimates, things like that. Nothing really unusual in that letter. Unique to the city in every letter, the audit adjustments are in the back of that letter. So anytime you receive an audit, the auditor commonly will propose audit adjustments, and those will be listed in the letter. There were very few audit adjustments. Your finance department, their accounting is very accurate. And I consider our firm pretty thorough with our procedures. We test a lot of items. We generally have a fair number of audit adjustments, so very impressed with the accounting work. And just the reporting back to us on questions, it was a really seamless transition. The other letter, communication regarding internal controls. This is our way to communicate things that we observe. So we walk through a lot of areas, every area really that's touching money. We're walking through those areas, processes, controls, seeing how things work, where are there controls, where are there potential weaknesses. So things are disclosed in that letter. There really isn't much there. There's also guidance about upcoming GASBs. Those are standards that the city will have to apply, and we're already discussing with Summer how to implement those. Those are in there as well. Those will be effective next year. So that's really everything I wanted to share. So at this time, I'll open it up to questions. Thank you.
Pretty thorough. And Keith and I had the option, as part of the audit committee, to sit down with him today and go in more detail. But really what I took away from it, just more laudatory comments about what our finance directorate has done for us over the past year. So
Great work, really, by the team. And very few, like you said, very few audit adjustments, just to comply with the auditing rules that the accounting or pronouncements are out there. So it was a great job. I was glad to see the pension liability come down this year based on our investment income. So.
any other questions from anyone here tonight? Reference the audit. And from council, could I get a motion to accept the fiscal year 2023-24 annual audit as presented by Brooks, Watson and Company, PLLC?
So moved.
Keith?
Second.
Ruben. Any other discussion from council? And with the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thank you, sir. Did he already leave?
Wow.
Man, that was quick. Summer mentioned it as part of her presentation, the popular annual financial report, and I got a copy of it and read through it last night. And honestly, I was very impressed with it. And if you're giving all the credit to Julie, thank you very much for all that you've done. But I would recommend it. It's a easy read to understand the finances of how the city has been operated over the last year. So thank you all for taking that. And Julie, thank you for spending your birthday evening here at the council meeting with us. With that, we'll move on to our second consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and the possible action approving the first reading of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas, amending Chapter 1 General Provisions, Article 1.08, Boards, Commissions, and Committees, Section 1.08.001, Municipal Development District of Directors of the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, and providing severability and repealing clauses and effective date, removing place positions, and allowing for change of status board members. And Laura, you want to kick it off?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Just as a reminder for City Council and for the residents, the Municipal Development District was established in 2011 with the purpose of providing a stimulus of economic growth within the city. And the citizens of Fair Oaks Ranch approved a 0.5 cent sales tax to be added to the municipal sales tax as a funding source of the MDD. And in October 2011, the City Council created the Board of Directors to manage and control the district as a separate political subdivision of the city. And that was instituted by ordinance. The current board has 7 board members. Each are appointed by the City Council. The ordinance currently says that 2 directors shall be persons from the City Council and 1 from the Board of the Homeowners Association. And in that ordinance, we also have place numbers assigned to each of those positions and aligned to City Council or HOA board member or at large. We're all appointed for 2-year staggering terms, which go on the same cycle as our normal board and commission appointee cycle, which appointments start in October 1st, and they go to September 30th of the second year. So they're 2-year terms. Those terms are set by state statute. And in fact, a lot of this board and district is governed by state statute. All directors will serve until an successor is appointed, and a director may be removed by city council. So that's what the current ordinance says. I serve on the MDD, as does Councilmember Roden and Councilmember Alvera. And so during our October meeting, we go through regular reviews of our rules of procedures. The MDD did a regular review of the rules of procedures, and there was several parts of it that we wanted to change. One of the parts had to do with the composition of the city council and how it describes how many council members and how many people are members of the board. One of the concerns was, while Councilmember Olvera was appointed to the board as an at-large resident, he was then elected to city council after he was appointed into his term. And so while the ordinance doesn't specifically prevent 3 members of council being on the council, being on the MDD, it just seemed like it wasn't very clear how the rules of the procedures handle that. We did talk through different ways that we thought the wording should be, but in the end, that section of the rules of the procedure really just mimicked what the ordinance said. And ordinances are not passed by the MDD, they're passed by city council. So in the end, the decision of what wording and how this is handled is a vote of the city council and a change of the ordinance. We also discussed it in the January meeting, and there was not consensus among the board on how to write the wording. We tried many different ways of doing it, to do it in a simplified manner. I don't think we were able to come up with one easy way to write it. Some of the board members thought it was okay to have up to 3 members of city council, some did not. In the end, we asked the city attorney or the MDD attorney to help with the wording with staff to propose it. The other parts of the rules of procedure that aren't related to the ordinance, I think we have pretty much laid out, but we can't obviously change our rules unless the ordinance is changed. So what is presented to you are the comments that we got back from staff and the attorney on how they feel would address the situation that we saw there. The other part is that the terms of city council don't align with the terms of the board. So there's going to be regular time where council members who are appointed to the board may no longer be on council. And same thing with the HOA board. HOA board, I think they appoint their board members in November or January. Again, never on the same cycle as when we appoint the board members. So really looking for direction on how to make sure that the ordinance allows for those situations. So you'll see on page 180, the proposed wording. I'm sorry, you have a updated one in your, that was provided to you, right? In the packet. It was changed since the packet went out. And you'll see the revisions in red. The only change, I believe, Mayor, was on
Paragraph 3.
paragraph 3, just added the word "to the extent practicable." Otherwise, everything else is the same that is in your packet. So this is just brought before you for discussion, because in the end, we can't update the MDD rules of procedures until the ordinance is updated. And it's really the discretion of council of how they want to appoint the members of the MDD and handle the situations that we have. To go through the changes that are in here, there's a couple that are just pure administrative changes. One is in the first paragraph. It's still referred to bylaws, and we don't have bylaws for the MDD. We have rules of procedure, so that's just an administrative change. And then also in paragraph C, that's also administrative change. We do have to bring our budget to council for approval, and it had set that we have to bring it no later than the regular September council meeting. Staff had commented that there's no reason it has to be at a regular council meeting as long as it happens before the last council meeting, because there's many times where we have special council meetings in September to handle budget items. So we just changed that from regular to last. The meat of the of the conversation really is in paragraph B, where you can see the proposal is that we remove the places. So it doesn't particularly matter who is in which place. Oh, the other administrative thing, I apologize. In paragraph 1, the other administrative thing was it said each director shall be a resident of the city or the city's ETJ. The district has its own boundaries, and so it's better that it is a requirement that the director be a resident of the district and the district's boundaries. So that's why we wanted to clean that up. Also, just an administrative correction. So really, besides those 3 administrative things, it's kind of, do you feel the wording that has been updated in here addresses the concern, or is the desire of council to have this in place? So currently, we have 3 members of city council on the MDD. It's a temporary condition. It's less than the quorum of council. As soon as my term is up on city council, I'll no longer be on council, but still on the MDD, so we'll be back to 2. But I'm assuming stuff like this may happen again in the future. So just wanted to bring this forward to you.
Okay.
Any questions on the wording in Exhibit A?
So we do have 2 portions. What's shown on the screen and which was part of the packet was the initial portion. And then this was further updated, and a copy was provided to council prior to the meeting, which is on the desk, which is redlined changes. And I believe what we're looking at is a recommendation for the wording on the redline version for tonight. And as I went through this, I have no problem with removal of the place numbers off of the ordinance. And really the administrative changes, I don't have any problems with those. I don't know that the place numbers provide any distinct value to this ordinance, and so removing them I don't have any problems with. And also adding the comment that we'd never have a quorum on the MDD, I think makes sense. The real change came with the distinction of, to the extent possible, we will maintain 2 council members, 2 serving council members on the MDD board, and 1 FORHA board member on the MDD. And the wording of "to the extent possible" was really introduced so that we don't run into the challenges, because we have FORHA elections come at mid-year. Council member elections come in May, and then we do the appointments to the MDD in the September, with appointments starting in October of every year. And so they don't align up. And so the "to the extent possible" allows council flexibility, and I believe would address any situations where we would have these vacancies, where somebody came off the FORHA Board of Directors, but was still serving on the MDD, and allow flexibility for council to then review it the following September on how they want to address filling the board at a later time. So that's really my comments. I think really this wording to me provides us flexibility to ensure that we man the MDD with the appropriate personnel. Any other comments?
I got some.
Uh-huh.
Procedurally, I know since ordinance, it comes from ordinance, so it would be us, but procedurally, should the MDD reach consensus of this language, make recommendations, which then comes to council?
We have not done that in the past. We've
Okay.
had other ordinance amendments to this ordinance driven by council.
And then I want to make sure, because I know there's a lot of discussion about making sure that the future composition includes 1 FORHA board member, because I think that was part of our discussion in the MDD meeting, the last one. And if a future council reads to the extent practical, or can you qualify that to mean you don't have to do it? Does that make sense? Like, I want to make sure that, because it was always 2 shall be from council, 1 shall be from FORHA Board of Directors. But if we add a qualifier of to the extent practicable, in the future, could somebody, a whole new council, interpret that by saying, well, we don't have to do that because we have that qualifier? That's my only concern as to whether that's reads where it would still be enforced with the shall.
So the reality is a future council can
Just amend the
all
whole
of
thing.
it.
Okay, yeah, that's true.
None of this is required by state law. The makeup of the board is not dictated in the state statute. There's nothing that says a quorum of a council can't sit on an MDD. I have another city where the MDD is the city council. So these are all local control provisions, and a future council can put that future council's wishes into that ordinance just as easily, so.
Okay.
But my understanding, the way we've worded that in this provides that council's desire in moving forward with this ordinance is to maintain 2 council members and 1 FORHA board member on the MDD.
With the qualifier that it could change at any point given the terms coming on or off.
Correct.
Okay.
It provides us that flexibility during that time frame.
I want to ask one more question to Dan, I'm sorry, just because you know the law. Because this is a political subdivision, once you're appointed into your term, it is a 2-year term, and you don't automatically get, you're no longer, you don't vacate your term because you're not on city council anymore, or you're not on the FORHA board. You have to have been removed or someone else has to be appointed in your position.
Yeah, you
Can
can
be
be,
an act.
you can be removed, and you also can hold over until your successor is appointed. So even if it goes to the end of the term and no action's been taken yet, you'll continue to serve until a successor is appointed.
But just because you were appointed, because you were a member of FORHA board.
That's right.
And you don't become a member, and you're no longer on the board, you're still in that term.
That's right. It's
Okay.
not a forfeiture just
Yeah.
because you're not on the board.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Do we need to change the wording on Section 3 instead of cities, homeowners, board of directors to Fair Oaks Ranch Homeowners Association Board of Directors? Because I don't think we have anything called the city's homeowners. I don't think that's an entity.
You've got the city and you've got the HOA. I think
Yeah.
it's a good idea.
That's a good call out. I was looking at the original ordinance, and I think that's how the original ordinance said it too. So that's a good.
Yeah, well, I thought since we're fixing it, let's fix it. Dan, is that correct?
Okay. Any questions from anyone here tonight? Yes, sir.
Wes Pieper, Fair Oaks Ranch. I'll save some of my comments till after whatever happens tonight because there'll be a second reading, but can you show us the resolution? Us peons haven't seen this revised document. The changes made, you referred just to a few words added to the ordinance. Show us the whereas, because the whereas as it was drafted contained some statements which I believe were false regarding what had happened at the MDD meeting in January. This topic, including the idea of allowing more than 2 council people to be on the board of the MDD, was something that I was going to speak to, but I was waiting until the MDD meeting in April when I understood the MDD board would be discussing this topic again. So I assumed any action by council would be after the April MDD meeting. I was a bit surprised when it showed up on the council meeting agenda for tonight. But I'd like to see that. Well, I don't have to see it, I'll see it later. But there were a couple of statements in whereas provisions in the lead-up, resolution, whatever the heck it is, the first part of the ordinance, that I found to be inaccurate compared to what actually happened at that January MDD meeting. So that might be pertinent to discuss. And again, I'll save any of my other comments. I personally found the original provision regarding people's terms ending to be less confusing than what you're about to adopt. But I'll address that later before the next council meeting, should you proceed tonight. Thanks.
Okay.
And council, as you see, I think staff also provided updated whereas statements.
Right. I believe that's the point Mr. Pieper was making, is we did get copies, but he hasn't seen the copy. And it is the first reading of an ordinance tonight, so if we were to approve this tonight, it would have to come back with the second reading, and it would all be included at that time also. Anybody else have comments? Then what is on I'll read the motion off here in a minute, but what is being considered are the changes with the document that we have, which was highlighted in red, with the only change being in paragraph 3, we're crossing out the word city and adding Fair Oaks Ranch Homeowners Association. And then with that, could I get a motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch Code of Ordinances, Chapter 1, General Provisions, Article 1.08, Boards, Commissions, and Committees, Section 1.08.001, Municipal Development District Board of Directors.
I so move.
Laura, and could I get a second? From Emily.
Mr. Mayor, before you vote, if I could get a clarification, if the intent is to include the change that Mr. Roden suggested on the Board of Directors terminology as part of the motion.
Yes. That's what I understood as well.
So,
Is that what you're talking about?
yeah, and maybe I didn't hear it, but
Yeah, he said it.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't catch that.
I could have missed it. Thanks for keeping me straight. Any other discussion items from council? Then with the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So we have a vote of 6-1. And Councilman O'Vera opposed. With that, we'll move on to our next consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and possible action approving a resolution to execute an interlocal agreement for ambulance and emergency medical services with Bexar County Emergency Services District number 4. And this one I'll turn over to our city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Tonight, we're bringing forward for consideration, the proposed interlocal agreement with Bexar County Emergency Services District number 4, ESD 4, for ambulance transport services. As, of course, you're all aware, we've discussed this twice in workshop form on February 6th and March 6th, which allowed us to provide council direction and revisions to the initial draft as well as the upgrade. Based on those discussions, we have, I think, refined the agreement to ensure clarity and terms of service as dictated by the council. Of course, brief recap, the city must secure a new ambulance transport provider due to Acadian Ambulance Services decision not to renew its contract. That agreement expires April 30th. Their contract termination follows the loss of its regional contract with Bexar County, which reduced its footprint in our area. This proposed agreement is a 6-month contract running from April 1st through September 30th. That would align it with the existing expiration date, with the existing agreement we have with ESD4 for fire and first response services, allowing us time to evaluate long-term ambulance transport services. So after the first and second workshops, we've incorporated the council's feedback and refined the agreement to both ensure alignment with regional models as well as refine or clarify the service expectations. Again, most importantly is the contract template itself. The agreement now follows very closely the Allegiance and Bexar County ambulance service contract that aligns, of course, with our region and with industry-specific standards for EMS transport or ambulance transport services. We have defined the response time standards. A contract sets an overall response time goal of 11 minutes or less across all priority levels. This exceeds the Bexar County benchmark, which only requires the 11-minute standard for the highest priority calls. We talked last time on staffing and equipment requirements. The agreement clarifies that ESD4 will provide MICU-level staffing. That means at least one EMT paramedic on each ambulance. That would only change in unforeseen emergency or disaster scenarios where there is an extreme staff shortage. Based on the last workshop, we've modified the reporting and the reporting requirements of the ESD. So ESD will provide run-specific reports as it does now, in addition to the quintile data we talked about. So they will provide both levels of detail reporting to the city to track performance and response data. And one thing that has stayed consistent throughout the agreement is the cost, which is the same as our current agreement with Acadian. That's $6,125 per month, which is $73.5 prorated monthly. So again, tonight, this agreement after 2 workshops is presented for your formal consideration and approval. The ESD4 board met and approved this agreement at its last meeting and is prepared to move forward. And as proposed, again, the formal transition would take place on April 1st, so in a few weeks if this is approved. So again, just to ensure continuity of this vital service in our community as we transition to different providers. So we have representatives from ESD4 tonight. If you have further operational questions, I thank the group for their continued partnership and through working through this agreement and working through some of the changes and refinements that we had. So thank you all, and I think, Mr. Mayor, with that, I will attempt to answer any further questions you may have. Thank you.
From council, any questions? Nope. All right. Any questions from anyone here tonight? Think I get a motion to approve a resolution executing an interlocal agreement for ambulance and emergency medical services with Bexar County Emergency Services District Number 4.
So move.
Ruben,
Second.
second from Scott. Any further discussion from council? With the motion on the table, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. And move on to our last consideration item tonight, which is the consideration and the possible action to approve a resolution amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch's personnel policies. And Jim, I know you've been doing a lot of work on this.
Yes, we have. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Jim Williams, Assistant City Manager. For consideration tonight, we're at our first round of probably several rounds of personnel policy updates. Before we get started, just a quick little bit of housekeeping. In your packet, you're going to see Exhibit A and Exhibit B. Exhibit A in the packet would be the clean version. If the council adopts the resolution unamended, that's what we would cut and paste right into the personnel policy. Exhibit B has the redlined version, so anything that's underlined in red is the proposed additions. Anything that's black strike through is the proposed deletions, and then anything in just plain black text is what we're keeping. There's not a whole lot of plain black text in there, so I just want to point that out. So tonight we're going to go through, for consideration is a policy number 12, the discipline policy, policy number 14, the grievance policy, and then just a general omnibus replacing outdated, obsolete items. And I'll go into detail with that here in just a second. First up is the discipline policy. So the primary reason for change on this policy, and also the same on number 14 that's coming up in a second here, is generally it's just not consistent with the charter that was adopted in 2017. That's the big issue. We have a city manager form of government right now. Our city manager functions as the CEO of the government, and the mayor is not as involved in the day-to-day operations as the mayor was back in 2016, and earlier 2006, things like that. So the other issue with this discipline policy is there's really no uniformity between the discipline appeal process and the grievance appeal process. It sends employees and staff down two different paths with multiple different appeal processes. So I'll get to the details on that in number 14. But basically what we're proposing is just send employees down who have concerns or disputes in the work center. Just send them down the grievance path, and the grievance path is very simple. Some other reasons for change on the discipline policy, there's a whole lot of changes in there, but the big ones are we're just adding more direct and more clarifying language to it, very straightforward, very simple language. We're removing the just cause section. Just cause is a legal term. Really what we're wanting to do is just put procedures and standards in the policy. And again, we want to put in behavior standards. There was a small piece of that in the current policy of behavior standards. It wasn't well fleshed out. We just fleshed that out a whole lot better. And then this policy also, the changes just speak to this administrative definitions and how we're going to handle things administratively with the disciplinary process. Next one. Grievances. Again, primary reason for the change, trying to be consistent with the city charter. I briefed that already. And then we want uniformity. We'd like to see uniformity between the discipline appeals and the grievances process, so they kind of match up. The other big reasons why we put this in front of you tonight is we want to clarify which issues are grievable under the current policy. Pretty much any dispute is grievable under the current policy. We want to clarify which ones are and which ones aren't. We also clarified and baked in an informal versus a formal grievance process. Really what we want is we want the supervisors more involved in some of the dispute handling. In the current policy, it just goes to the city administrator or the mayor. Just dump it on them, right? We want to get the supervisors being supervisors. And then the other reason is we have record-keeping standards on grievances that we probably need to keep, and then we also want to put a retaliation prohibition. We don't want to penalize people or throw a wet blanket on people who have disputes and just airing those out. We want to make sure people can do that, employees can do that. Okay, outdated language cleanup, and I went through and did a little research here. But basically, the city administrator, we want to switch that to city manager. Again, we're in the home rule form of government with the city manager now. We have mayor with city manager, except for 2.0902 in our city charter, section 5.01. It has the public and news media coordinators as the mayor and the city manager in our current charter. So we're going to leave that one alone. We might come back at a later date with when we do chapter 2 and maybe clean that language up a little bit, but the gist of it's going to be the same. And then go through it and replace city accountant with director of finance. And some examples of where this is kind of outdated. City administrator, that term is referenced 77 times in the current policy. The city accountant is referenced 17 times in the current policy, and the mayor 24 times in the current policy. So an example of some appropriate change examples in 3.0601, which we'll bring before the council here at some point. The city has, the policy reads that the city has 4 methods of recruiting and selecting persons. It goes through the steps. And then it says the city administrator and the mayor will determine the method of selection to be used in filing each vacancy. Our current practice is pretty much the city manager selects those methods. Another good example, it's in 4.0203, and it talks about employees in the introductory period. And any time during the introductory period, and a new employee may be dismissed. It gives some examples and some guidance on why, but it has to be with the city administrator and the mayor's authorization. Right now, city manager handles those decisions right now as a current practice. So those are just some examples. There's lots of them. I'm sure you don't want me to go through all of them. So, questions?
Go ahead, Keith.
I've got a couple, and I think I've had a chance to discuss it with staff a bit, but in the moonlighting section on page 204 under 12.03, I feel like we might want to make one modification where it says holding other employment that is not properly disclosed or authorized by the city. I think it would be appropriate to change the word of or to and, because that means somebody could have another job and they just say, hey, I've got another job, and we have no authority to say that's appropriate or not. And it could be a job that conflicts with the city. So you could have a city employee working for the city of Bernie, and it might conflict with their job here. So I think I would suggest considering that. Otherwise, they can just say, oh, I'm working for Bernie, and I'm doing it after hours here. And that kind of leaves us open for an inability to make some kind of judgment call on that. That's one suggestion. Any thoughts on that?
Sure, yeah, so that section is just a general standards of conduct section, and we're gonna come back to the council with chapter 2, and it's gonna lay out more detail of those ethical principles, Mr. Roden, that you mentioned, but I think if you change it to and or, I think it accomplishes the same thing for what we're trying to get to.
Well, I kind of think and. I don't think or does
I mean,
the same
or
thing.
to and, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, got you. So
Yeah.
okay. So I would suggest that. And then the other one I was questioning was in 14.03, the grievable issues. The one that kind of I'm confused on, and maybe you can add some light, is the third bullet, written warnings of suspensions. And what I read through here, that you have a process and a protocol for handling warnings and suspensions, that once those processes go through, it seems like we would end up repeating that by making that fit into a grievable issue. I know you've got some times and you know some things you have to support your grievance. You can't just say I don't like this and I have a grievance. You have to have support. But it seems like you already got a process to handle suspensions and warnings. So why, if that's been resolved, or at least that's handled with that process, why would you allow it to come back in and kind of go back around the horn again? And so that one seems like it should either be maybe moved out of that section into non-grievable issues or just taken out completely. But that one I'm not clear on as to why it would be grievable. I don't know of an example that would make sense to have that as a grievance.
So let me see if I can repeat your question.
Yeah, that'd help, yeah.
So your question, if I understand it, is why would a written warning or suspension be grievable?
Right.
Why is it in that category? It's really a policy call from the council. We recommend to have that as a if someone has a dispute over their written warning or their suspension, we think that's fine. And we ran this through our legal team and they were fine with it too. But again, it's the policy of the council. If they wish to change it, they can.
I would say on that topic, if you remove that, then the 4 bullet points seems pretty narrow, and I'm sure there could be something that would come up that's not in the other 4 bullet points, but would probably be covered by a written warning or a suspension.
Mr. Roden, did I get to the heart of your question?
Say that again.
Did I answer your question?
You answered it. I don't think I necessarily agree with it.
Okay.
So thank you for answering the question. But I mean, because you have an escalation process in your suspension and warning process, you can escalate and appeal all the way up through your supervisor to the department head. You've already got that kind of outlined. It just seems like you might be creating a little bit of paperwork nightmare to leave it as something you can come back and file agreements. And I'm no expert in HR policy, but it struck me, and so maybe suggest y'all take a harder look at that.
Mr. Roden, I think I understand more what you're getting to. So in the discipline policy, not the grievance policy, there is a provision at the very end that says warnings and suspensions go straight to that formal grievance process, so it's only one process they go through. It's not multiple bites at it.
Okay.
At grievances, so we're gonna be funneled down that one process.
Okay, so that clarifies it, because
Okay.
I couldn't find that flow when I read through it.
Okay.
So if that's how it works, then I'm fine with it.
Okay. Okay.
Let me ask you this, what if you get a written warning on your performance evaluation? Could you, if you got a written warning on something that was a non-grievable issue, could you then come talk about it and discuss it as a grievable issue?
So, Mr. Swark, I'm interpreting your question. What if an employee got a written warning on a performance evaluation?
Or any non-grievable issue, oral counseling or something came up in the oral counseling and then they got written a warning during that oral counseling, could they then move that oral counseling into a grievable issue based on the fact that they had the written warning piece of paper and said, here, look, this is what I want to, this is my grievance, you know?
Right. I would keep the written warning and the performance evaluation as separate instruments and separate administrative actions. And the performance evaluation is just the supervisor giving performance feedback to the employee. Where sometimes that doesn't result in discipline. Sometimes they go hand in hand. But our intent is to keep those as separate administrative actions. So just a warning is just a warning.
And then a suspension is lobbed in with it. So I would say a suspension is there tied to it, written warnings or suspension. So if you got a suspension based off your performance evaluation, maybe that would be.
It could. A performance evaluation that was negative could lead to a disciplinary action. They could be parallel, but they're administratively separate things.
But we would not tie any type of discipline directly to the performance evaluation. Either the performance evaluation would either be the representation of prior performance evaluations, or if if a performance review resulted in substandard performance, some type of violation, they would be put on an action plan, which could lead to further disciplinary action, but we don't use the performance evaluation as a disciplinary mechanism, if that makes sense.
It does.
They're
I
not
understand
going
what
to be
you're
the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Anybody else?
I just, so just to be sure I understand, so you say in your procedures, you've got that ability to handle that straight to the grievance process, the example you gave me? Because I didn't see it in here, because this is just the policy, right? So you've got procedures that allow that person to file a grievance against some warning or some suspension. That's just a one-way path, not two ways. Can you show that to me? Is it in
Yes,
here,
it's in.
or is it separate?
So an employee who got a written warning or
Yeah.
a suspension as a disciplinary action, we would handle the dispute process through 12.06. It would be just the appeal. And it basically, it's one sentence. It just drives that handling of that dispute to the grievance process. There's no process, and it just says, go here. Go over to 14.
Gotcha. All right, I
Very
see it
simple.
here.
Yeah.
Right, under the last paragraph. Okay.
Yes, sir. And to the council, if you could indulge me a little bit, I noticed as I was preparing this afternoon, there was one oversight, and I would request an amendment on 1206 in the disciplinary policy. The second sentence says written warnings, suspensions, and dismissals may proceed directly to the formal grievance process. If you could please strike "and dismissals." That was an oversight.
So strike the word dismissals?
If the council would like to.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think with that, you probably want to add the word "and."
Yes, ma'am. We
Between
would
warnings and
clean up the
suspension.
language,
Just
yes,
clean
ma'am.
it up, right? Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Any questions from anyone here tonight? Then here in a second, I'll ask for a motion to approve the resolution to the personnel policy with the, I think, 2 amendments that we made to it. One, 12.06, with the removal of the word dismissal, and then clean up with the language to move the and. And then on, under 12.03, workplace standards, with the definition of moonlighting, where it says holding other employment that is not properly disclosed or authorized by the city, we'll change that, not properly disclosed and authorized by the city. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, with those changes, could I get a motion to approve a resolution amending the City of Fair Oaks Ranch's personnel policy?
So moved.
Jonathan? Second. Okay. And a second? Any other discussion from council? Good. Motion on the table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Thanks, Jim. I believe that completes the consideration items that we had on the agenda for tonight. Now we'll move on to our workshop item, which is reviewing recommendations from the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee from their February 26, 2025 committee meeting. And I believe they have 3 recommendations that they're going to present tonight. And I'll turn it over to Carol to kick this off.
Thank you. And good evening. Carol Van Zandt, Assistant City Manager, and Chairperson Al Schmidt from the Transportation Safety Committee is with us tonight. And I also see our Vice Chairperson, Chris Depke, in attendance. So on February 26, as the mayor has noted, the committee considered 6 citizen requests relative to transportation safety. 3 requests received committee approvals to advance to City Council. So we will provide a summary of the submittals and committee recommendations. After each, we'll pause for a discussion and receive direction.
So after each, Carol, what you're really looking for is a recommendation for council on how to proceed.
If applicable, yes.
Okay.
So the first request is to reduce the 30 miles per hour speed limit to 25 miles per hour on Nole Hase. TSAC's recommendation was 25 miles per hour to lower it from 30 due to the heavy residential area and road curves on Nole Hase, which can be seen on this depiction here. Nole Hase is the yellow line with the curves. The red rooftops, which really are not red, are showing the heavy residential area that the submitter was concerned about. Nole Hase goes from Deeds Elkhorn up to Fair Oaks Parkway and a little bit past Fair Oaks Parkway where it dead ends into a cul-de-sac. So the submitter requested the lower speed limit due to high speed of vehicles on Nole Hase, the blind curves, the many young families with children and elderly living in the neighborhood, and being a cut-through between Fair Oaks Parkway and Deeds Elkhorn. Some additional notes. The submitter and 1 other area resident spoke in favor of reducing the speed limit. There have been no reported collisions caused by speed. In accordance with the city's transportation map, Nole Hase is designated as a local street. According to the Texas Transportation Code, City Council can establish a speed limit of 25 miles per hour if you determine that the current speed is unreasonable or unsafe. Anything lower than 25 will require a traffic study. So staff seeks direction on TSAC's recommendation to reduce the speed limit to 25 miles per hour. If directed, an ordinance will be brought forth at a future meeting for consideration. I cede the floor unless I'm sorry, you have a comment?
I'd just like to say that our committee, I think every one of us on the committee took a drive or 2 down Nole Hase. And we found that it was a very curvy street. The 30-mile-an-hour speed limit was there. Going to 25 makes a lot of sense. It was a curvy street, and over the years, that's an older street, over the years, the trees have so grown over that it gives you a closed-in effect as you're driving, a claustrophobic kind of effect as you're on that street. Plus, the mailboxes are close to the street. It's not a wide street. So we all felt that the 25 was a very appropriate thing to reduce it to. And there were a couple of people from the area that came, residents, and spoke on that also. The yield sign at Sumter, there was a split vote on that as to whether or not there should be a stop sign or a yield sign. And the vote ended up being that the yield sign should stay rather than a stop sign.
So.
Thank you.
For council, what we're looking at tonight, what has been presented is, do we want to pursue reducing the speed limit on Nolahase from 30 miles per hour to 25?
Just have one clarifying question. Is the proposal for the entire length of the street or just between Dietz and Fair Oaks Parkway?
The recommendation from TSAC was on Nolahase. They
So the
did
whole
not
street?
define an area. Correct, the whole street.
Even all the way up to the cul-de-sac up there? Okay, thank you.
What's the speed limit on Kojak? Do we know? Is it 30?
I believe it's 30.
Because that's on the north end. You'd be at 30 coming out of your little section onto Noliase, and then it would be 25.
Correct.
Okay. But they're sort of similar. So,
So there was no
yeah.
submission to the TSAC to lower anything other than Nolahase. So yes, that could be a challenge.
Yeah, because you'd have two streets that are parallel to each other north of Fair Oaks Parkway. One's 25, one's 30. Correct. And they're sort of similar size, similar number of homes. That could be, I don't know, either awkward or not followed.
I do believe there's stop signs
Okay.
on those intersections. So if they're doing 30 from Kojak or Sumter, upon entering Nolahase, they would do 25, and we would have the appropriate speed limit change signs posted.
Were any of the comments from the citizens, were they specific in terms of whether it was only in between Dietz and Fair Oaks Parkway? Like, or were they residents of that section, or were they residents of the northern section, what I'll call the northern section?
They didn't give their full addresses, but I believe they were residents from that area, from the young lady who spoke. I believe they were neighbors from her address.
Go ahead.
I think that was going to be my similar question, is if the reason is curves and cut-through, the only curves and cut-through is between Dietz and Fair Oaks Parkway. North of it, there's almost no curves. No one's cutting through anywhere. And so I was just curious why the determination was to go past the parkway. What type of discussion happened at TSAC regarding the street past the parkway?
We didn't discuss going past you said the parkway.
So to recap, they didn't have a discussion past the parkway. I think the thought process is to have Nolahase from Dietz to the parkway at 25, and then right after the parkway, for a very short distance, it would be 30. It would just which is
remain
fine, or
Right.
to be consistent on Nolahase, I think.
But nobody normally drives the entire length of
I
Nolahase.
do remember that, the point that did come up about that is that going that other direction across the parkway, you would go into the sewage treatment area, so the street ends.
Yes, I drive it frequently. But it's straight, not dangerous, and not a cut-through. Okay.
Not highly traveled at all.
So looking at it overall, does anybody have any concerns about just overall reducing the speed limit?
Is it the entire street or just up to
Gonna
the
get to
parkway?
that.
Oh, sorry. Gotcha.
Is everybody okay with moving forward with an ordinance to reduce the speed limit?
Yes?
Yes.
And then with that, limiting it to only that portion of Nolahase between Dietz Elkhorn Road and Fair Oaks Parkway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Un- Yeah. Unless people on Nole, unless there's concern north of that, but I don't think I don't think that's come forward, so yes.
Thank
right.
you. So as a recap, lower the speed limit to 25 miles per hour on Nole Hase between Dietz Elkhorn and Fair Oaks Parkway. Perfect, thank you.
All right, second item.
So the second request is to install a fourth stop sign on Battle Intense and High Echelon. TSAC recommends installing the requested sign along with always stop plaques at each of the stop signs. The rationale is due to the area residents' support of this fourth stop sign, the intersection being offset, and the special conditions listed in the 2024 intersection analysis summary. This depiction here shows that intersection. The stop sign located on Ballin Intense coming from Fair Oaks Parkway is highlighted in pink. The submitter requested this fourth stop sign due to the intersection being used by children, golf carts, runners, and cyclists, due to the speed of vehicles on Battle Intense coming from Fair Oaks Parkway, motorists on Hansel Drive being unaware the intersection is not a four-way stop sign, and due to the steep streets. Some additional notes include the submitter and 2 area residents spoke on behalf of 4 other residents in support of the fourth stop sign. The committee members were provided a copy of the summary of the 2024 intersection analysis summary. Showing a fourth stop sign is not warranted based on the criteria in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. The analysis also provided mitigation methods and provided further special considerations. In February 2024, City Council approved advancing all the proposed mitigations. Sorry, my apologies. On June 6, 2024, an ordinance establishing a fourth stop sign was not approved. We did do all of the other mitigation methods, such as trimming of vegetation, enhancing the pavement markings, installing stop bars, and creating that ordinance of a fourth stop sign that did not get approved on June 6. Staff seeks direction on installing a 4-way stop sign and all-way stop plaques on each sign as recommended by TSAC. If directed, an ordinance will be brought forth at a future meeting for consideration.
I can say that we had at our committee meeting, there were 3 or 4 residents that live along High Echelon and in that area and on Battle Intense. And they were very supportive of it. So we ended up unanimously passing the request for that stop sign. Personally, I found that people do bypass Hansel on the Parkway and turn down Battle Intense. I have seen that several times. The car will be in front of me all of a sudden in front of the stop sign instead of behind me. So anyway, we had recommended approval for that.
So the issue here is that it's been brought back to us. We did disapprove this. It was June 6th, is that when? And I think with conditions then that it be referred to the TSAC, which it has been done, and to look for citizens' comments from within the area to provide comments either for or against the additional stop sign. And I think those were the 2 concerns that we had. So now it has been to TSAC. They have reviewed it, and with additional comments and brought it back to us. Is this something we want to move forward with? Installing the 4th stop sign at Hansel and Battle Intense in High Echelon.
Likewise.
I can say the same, and say the, you know, and then they still think that it's a good idea to go through with it. Makes sense to.
I think the reason it was kicked to committee was because there was no resident comments, and so the fact that the committee did their due diligence and asked for that, that relieved the concern that was had when we voted against it, so.
Okay. All right. So Carol, we can move forward with an ordinance to approve the stop sign.
Yes, and I just want to clarify, you also want to go ahead and move forward with the four-way stop
Right,
flags.
we
I
need
mean,
to
stop,
replace
that's a
the
given, I just want to make sure.
Three-way
Thank
stop,
you.
and replace with forward. Yes, sir.
I thought of this later, is that if assuming the approval of the stop sign, since it's a new stop sign and you're kind of coming around that curve down the hill toward it, would it be appropriate to have some type of a warning sign before that, or at least a temporary sign before that telling people that it's a new requirement to stop down there?
We can
So
talk with
somebody
the,
doesn't cruise through there very quickly.
yeah, we could talk with Public Works, and
I
I
think
know
we
they
can
have
handle
means
that
for putting
operation.
flags or some notification on it so that people are aware, yes.
That's a standard practice for new signs.
We
to
do.
put at minimum flags and often a stop ahead.
Oh, yes, sir. All right, Carol, third item.
Third item. Thank you. Okay, the last submittal is to install a four-way stop sign at the intersection of Keeneland Drive, Ventura Lane, and Battle Intense. TSAC made no recommendation on this request, but did make a subsequent recommendation to add intersection ahead signs on Keeneland due to increased traffic. Oh, sorry, I apologize. This is a depiction of Keeneland Drive coming from Ralph Fair Road, going towards Deer Meadow Estates. The submitter requested the four-way stop as motorists on Ventura Lane and on Battle Intense need to pull into the intersection to obtain a clear visual of Keeneland vehicles and due to increased traffic on Keeneland. Some additional notes. Existing stop signs and cross-traffic does not stop signs are on Ventura Lane and on Battle Intense. The intersection will be placed on the proposed radar feedback sign priority location list that will be presented to the council during the budget. The committee was provided a summary of the 2024 intersection analysis showing a four-way stop is not warranted based on the criteria in the Manual of Unified Traffic Control Devices. The analysis also provide proposed mitigations and further special considerations. At the TSAC meeting, only the submitter spoke on this request. Post-meeting, as this was a subsequent recommendation, staff met to vet the final recommendation. Staff does not concur, as warning signs we feel should be provided when there is a need to call driver attention to unexpected conditions not readily apparent to motorists. We found the intersection is unobstructed on Keeneland. Stop bars on Ventura and Battle Intense have been pushed out, allowing cross-traffic to see vehicles on Keeneland. And having unnecessary signs can distract drivers and cause driver confusion. So here's the depiction again. Staff now seeks direction on TSAC's recommendation to install intersection ahead signs on Keeneland Drive. If the consensus tonight, there is no required ordinance for such a sign.
And Carol, just for clarification, the item came to the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee with the recommendation to make this a four-way stop.
Correct.
TSAC's recommendation was not to do that.
Correct.
And so that item is really not being brought to council. The Transportation Safety Advisory Committee looked at this, and their recommendation was to add intersection ahead signs on Keeneland as you approach from both directions into this intersection.
Correct. Perfect.
And so the guidance that they're looking for is, do we want to add intersection ahead signs? And the staff recommendation is not to do.
Is this even a matter for council? We don't normally vote on this, so is it, this is a decision that is normally made at a staff level. We never vote on stuff like this. So is it being brought to us because there's a disagreement between staff and the recommendation of the committee? Because we don't, I mean, I don't know how we would even vote on this.
That is a good point.
Okay.
I believe because TSAC made a recommendation, we felt, the chairperson felt that the council should hear about it.
Short answer,
But the short
council
yes.
member, is yes.
Yes.
That is the reason. TSAC made a recommendation. It would, as Carol said, would not require an ordinance. Staff disagrees with the recommendation, but obviously if council directs otherwise, then we would certainly do so.
Let me say that the TSAC, our committee, was not, we'll say, privy to the staff comments that came later. The first time that we saw those was when we read the agenda, which then had these additional staff comments. So that was not presented at the committee at all. And quite frankly, it seems like, and what we did approve were to put in 2 caution signs of the intersection, letting you know that this cross intersection was going to be there because it is a heavily traveled area. It seems like these, quite frankly, the staff comments are more feelings rather than regulatory type procedural guidance type things, that they're more opinions or feelings versus a hard requirement to consider. So again, the item that's on the table is the, I believe, the committee's recommendation for the 2 signs with the additional information that the staff has provided.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Do our TSAC rules of procedure address this situation? Because normally they can make a recommendation to put up caution signs and it would never come to council, right? So is there anything in the rules of procedure that states what happens if something that TSAC recommends happening that doesn't need to come to council is disagreed with at staff, this situation? Does our rules talk through this situation?
I do not believe so.
Aha.
I do not
That's a
believe
bigger
so.
problem.
And the,
Okay.
the issue was, or the challenge for us, and after tonight, the process can change. I understand where you're going, and it's very valid. If TSAC makes a recommendation, comes to council. If it's a traffic safety issue, it doesn't define whether it's a yield sign, stop sign, just any.
Would this have come to council if it came to staff? If a resident came to you and said, can we put a caution sign out intersection ahead, and staff said, we disagree, that would have never even come to council?
Probably not unless the resident,
Right,
right, yeah.
right, so,
So you're correct, hindsight,
Okay.
yes, yes,
I think where Carol was going though is, you're right, it would not have, but if the resident wanted to address it with council, they could do so as well. So TSAC made a recommendation that was not on the agenda. They rejected the initial request, made a follow-up request during the meeting, which was not part of the agenda. So staff evaluated it and disagreed with the recommendation.
So in this situation, they made the determination not to move forward with the stop signs. And so that item would have stayed, at that level, it would have just stayed with the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee and would never been advanced to City Council. Is that?
correct.
That's clear so far.
Correct.
So in this case, they made a further recommendation to do something. And that recommendation really doesn't require a council action.
Yes.
But they are making a recommendation and they are a recommending body. Does that action need to come to council? And that's so they're recommending putting up caution signs. It doesn't take a council action to make that determination, but the rules of procedure say they are a recommending body to council.
For things that council has authority over. I mean,
The TSAC is a recommending body to council, not to staff. TSAC does not direct staff.
I don't think it was the intention when we created TSAC to have more things come to council. Okay, I'm telling you that it was the opposite, actually.
Okay, so from my perspective, I'm not in favor of putting up the caution signs. And
Yeah, agree.
And beyond that, I think we've identified maybe a potential concern in the rules of procedure of the Transportation Safety Advisory Committee that maybe at these low level, do those need to be brought forward to council?
Exactly, and I also think the intention was we wouldn't have a workshop about everything that the committee did, because the point of creating the committee was for us not to have a workshop. We wanted them to do the workshop and then put together a consideration item for us. So rather than them voting on it, us then saying, okay, and then coming back 2 weeks later with another ordinance, I assumed if they voted for a recommendation, it would just be a consideration item on the city council agenda as recommended by TSAC, and we just vote yes or no, rather than discussing whether we wanted to even vote yes or no, and then voting yes or no.
And I don't think it's stifling in any way, because anybody that's on the TSAC that has an issue can still come in as a citizen to be heard, you know, and address the issue themselves if they felt so compelled.
Maybe the idea is to just clarify, like the mayor said, the rules of procedure, what qualifies for something to come to council, and just articulate that in the rules of procedure, that these
And
things.
now, in hindsight, because the recommendation was new at the conclusion of that meeting or that agenda item, we could have, prior to bringing it to council, gone back to TSAC with the staff recommendation and clarified that further. So I think that's a process that we could change in a situation like this. What I would, regardless of which issue we're talking about, what I would like to stay away from is a situation where the TSAC or anybody other than the city council is directing staff to install, whether it's traffic control or traffic calming devices. I hope that makes sense.
So in this case, even the caution sign, you would prefer that be brought to council to make a decision on? Is that?
In the event where staff determines it's not warranted or helpful, yes.
So where there's a disagreement between what's being recommended and what staff is.
But by the same token, if you give me direction otherwise, of course, we'll follow that too. So if you want to grant TSAC the authority to direct staff to install traffic calming devices where it votes to do so, I mean, we'll take that direction as well. But that's really the question before you is, do you want give TSAC the de facto power to direct traffic calming devices in the city?
Or we could do the opposite and give city manager authority to make the decision, regardless of the recommendation of committee, which
That is an option.
normally your job anyways, right?
Fair
So,
enough.
Okay.
I like that idea.
Okay.
I do think, though, if you could articulate what should come to council in their rules, that would be easier to operate going forward and give you the authority to handle the other matters such as that, I think. Because this is new, right? It's
a new
all new. It's
process.
the
We've
first
had
process,
2
and
meetings. One was a
so-
special meeting.
Yeah, but it's
And I-
good.
I do like Laura's idea, or, recommendation, whatever. Go ahead and just bring us the ordinance.
All right. We could do that.
Because we
That's-
can discuss it, I mean, you make a motion, whatever, you discuss it, and then you either yay it or nay it. So it eliminates one little step there.
All right.
Yeah, agreed.
Too easy.
Much better.
So as I review the rules of procedures, and if I'm hearing correctly, basically, anything that requires an ordinance or some kind of resolution, ordinance typically, bring to city council. If there is not a requirement for an ordinance, let's say, traffic calming devices, which includes speed bumps, which includes yield sign, includes no intersection ahead signs, something, operationally, we can handle.
City manager.
Correct.
I think the definition would be council action required.
Correct, okay.
Other than that, it could go to the city manager. Is that?
I'm okay with that.
The TSAC will need to understand what those are, because they may not fully know what constitutes council action. So, just to clarify.
Yes.
In either way, I mean, it's regardless, it's fair to follow up with the committee, and we will certainly do that.
Okay.
So I think I heard earlier, no sign on Keeneland?
No sign.
Okay, I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Since it was brought before us,
Correct.
we'll let you know, but I think going forward, we want to further define that process.
Perfect. Thank
I
you for
appreciate
your
the work
time.
they've done, though. I mean, this has been very helpful, and
Been great.
y'all were thorough about bringing the residents into the picture and getting their opinion. So, thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you.
All right, with that, that finishes our workshop item, and we have one report from staff tonight, an update on the upcoming 4th of July celebration. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I was asked to provide a quick update on the 4th of July celebration. So I did reach out to the club general manager. We chatted in mid-February or so, and like, hey, is the construction of the club going to cause any delays or any concerns about running the event? And he said no. So we are on. So we're going to have the 4th of July event. The general theme and flow is going to be pretty much the same as the years prior. There are some details we're probably going to change. Where we're at in the process right now is Clayton, procurement manager, him and I have procured the fireworks show and the laser and music piece of it. We're working out the details of what that looks like now. So if you have any requests for music, now would be a good time to send them our way. We've already gotten some requests, but we can modify a few things. But the fireworks piece of that, it's pretty much a canned show, and then we try to match the laser and the music piece to that. So, but if you have requests, we'll see what you have. What we're going to do is get together the two main teams, the club team and the city team, about mid-April or so. It gives us enough time to flesh out all the details. We'll have a big huddle, go through the planning pieces, and then we'll get back together about 2 weeks before the event, hit the go or no-go button, and we're off and running. One thing that came out, I don't know if most of you saw the Kendall County emergency order with fireworks. We're going to, our decision, city manager and I talked about it. We're going to keep planning like this thing is going to happen, because you never know. The weather could change. It could get dry. But as we get closer to that, we'll consult the chief and officials about what we really want to do going forward. And if we have to cancel, we may have to do that. I just want to plant that seed. That's a possibility.
The club's
Right
in
now.
Bear, right?
Excuse me?
The club's in Bear County, right?
The club is in,
Yes,
yes, it's in Bear County, just barely, yeah. So, but yeah, but the principles are still the same. It's really dry out right now. If it's windy, we don't want to create more problems.
Could you consider possibly, if that were to become an issue, just doing the laser show?
That's a good idea.
Or drones, you know, where they do
Or
those drone
drones.
things up
Yeah.
there, those big.
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
about, we can ask that question, yeah. We see
That's
if
an
that's a
idea.
capability, yeah. But yeah, we'll watch the weather, we'll watch all that, and as we get closer, we'll start making some decisions. But we're going to keep planning like it's happening.
Military flyover.
And Jim, I think it was 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago, however you work it out, we did have to cancel the fireworks show due to drought conditions.
I heard about
So,
that, yeah.
We've worked with, fire department came out and did their analysis, made their recommendations, and, yeah.
Yep.
So
We're hopeful, but we'll
we're going to get rain this spring, though, I know it.
That's what everybody says, right? Yeah.
Let's make an ordinance.
That it should rain.
So yeah, if you have questions, or requests on music, sooner than later, because we're going to start wrapping up the details with the vendor here pretty soon. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Jim. Does any council member have any announcements they'd like to make as part of the meeting tonight? Of course, I brought several. We basically covered parts of it, but due to low humidity and our extended drought and significant winds, the conditions have significantly increased for a possible wildfire in our area. Burn bans are in place for all 3 counties, and many counties in the Hill Country have issued wildfire disaster declarations. And this is in order to strengthen fire protection, fire prevention measures, and emergency response efforts. I just urge all, this is an extremely serious condition that we are in right now. Humidity levels went down to single digits yesterday, and with the high winds, a fire could erupt very quickly. I ask all to please be careful, and let's do our part to prevent any type of wildfire in our area. And somewhat related to this, City of Fair Oaks Ranch has updated its drought contingency plan. We've been through this, put out the information several times. We're introducing a 4-stage drought contingency plan, which better aligns with our surrounding water districts, including our primary suppliers and regulators. The key updates include a new Stage 3 drought level, revised water restrictions, and updated surcharge rates. And these will go into effect on April 1st, 2025, which is coming up quick. Good news, SafeWise, earlier this week released its list of the safest cities in Texas, and City of Fair Oaks Ranch is now ranked as the 16th safest city in the state and the safest city in the San Antonio area. So we were up from 34 to 16 this year. Yep. And just a reminder to all that the municipal general elections are scheduled for May 3rd, 2025. And in order to vote in this election, the last day to register is April 3rd. Please contact the elections department of your county to see what is needed to complete your registration. Scott, any additional?
No, sir, I think you covered it.
Okay. Does any council member have anything that they'd like added to a future agenda? Nothing specific. Scott, I don't see any need to go into executive session tonight.
No, sir.
Christina, anything I missed? Anything else we need to cover as part of the meeting?
No, sir.
Got it all? Scott, anything from your perspective?
Feel good.
Christina, I have the time now is 8:35 and we are adjourned.